I have been an avid consumer of film for much of my life. I can remember the days I drove my family mad watching Toy Story for the hundredth time in a row. I can nearly perfectly recite every line from the first five Star Wars movies ad nauseum. I remember how impactful my first viewings of Alien, The Terminator, and The Thing have had on me. Film is a big part of my life and I will continue to enjoy it for as long as I'm alive. But film has changed in the last decade. No longer are movies made with a satisfying narrative with great characters and setups. No longer are franchises of the past respected. Nothing is safe from retcons, reboots, or just straight up dying. Only something that makes the biggest buck in the long run will suffice. Extended universes, rage marketing to put asses in seats, and the lowest common denominator filmmaking have been put on the forefront in the last 11 years. And in my opinion, this all started with the release of James Cameron's Avatar. For the last decade and until just last year, James Cameron's Avatar was the highest grossing movie in the world, making well over $2 billion at the box office. It seemed to be a movie that attracted every kind of moviegoer to go and see it. And for a few years after it released, I used to think that as well. But the more I not only saw from stuff that was bad in the movie, but from James Cameron himself as of late, looking at you, Dark Fate, I started to see why the film is so divisive to this very day. From the clearly political angle that this film was made with, and the style over substance filmmaking that has infested almost every kind of genre in the entertainment industry, I ultimately put Avatar under the ambitious but ultimately underwhelming folder of movies that have been released this millennium. And now that the numerous sequels are on their way in the next year or so, and thanks to Critical Drinker making a good video on the subject recently, I decided to take a swing back into Pandora, and I noticed a very big problem with the film's plot. Not only does it make no sense, but it's a downright fabrication that seems to have been done only to virtue signal. Now, to be fair, I haven't done research into what particularly influenced Cameron while he was working on the writing of this film, as this is only going to detail just what is wrong with the premise and setup of the movie. But judging about what he has said about female protagonists in other franchises, and spoken about politics in general, I think it's safe to say his political angle is not only prevalent here, but it's pushed right in your face. So now, let's look at just what makes the premise and setup of this world's plot so fucking stupid. Also, did you know that James Cameron got so butthurt that Avatar The Last Airbender had Avatar in the title, that Nickelodeon had to remove it for the live-action adaptation of Avatar? Not like it mattered anyway, the film was a horrid piece of shit anyway. I'll get to you one day. The premise of Avatar's story is a tale that you've probably already heard of. Earth used up all of its resources and it must mine other planets to survive and expand to keep humanity prosperous. Now this can and has led to interesting conflicts in film, but most particularly, I have two examples from video games. In Dead Space, the markers are alien artifacts that expunge limitless energy but has the consequence of making anyone in close proximity to it go insane, suffering from dementia and other mental problems, and eventually turn into grotesque monsters known as necromorphs. The emulsion from Gears of War was an energy source that was so important to the survival of those on Sarah that the two reigning governments, the COG and the UIR, fight the pendulum wars for nearly 80 years for it, only for that resource to be a negative consequence on the world as it infects everything in its path, creating the Lambent and nearly destroying Sarah. One of the big things I would look for in an explanation of this story's premise is just exactly what unobtainium is, and what it means for not only the humans of this universe, but the Na'vi as well. But here's the kicker. The story not only doesn't explain what the fuck it is, they hand wave it away with this line. This is why we're here, because this little gray box sells over 20 million a kilo. That's the only reason. Now I know that the actual definition for unobtainium is an actual scientific term. It's for incredibly rare resource. But you fucking what, mate? And this is the writer, James Cameron, telling us why this company is shooting up aliens and mining for this element. Because it sells for a lot of money. It has no stated benefit for what it does to the humans of this universe, and why it's so important other than that line. Oh boy, why can't you just tell us why it's worth over 20 million a kilo? What does it do? Does it fortify a lot of stuff? What exactly does it do? What does it do? What does it do? This makes the conflict really suffer in the film because the amount of times this resource is nearly discussed by characters is zilch. It has one more big scene where it's shown to have a hotbed under the big ass tree that the main group of Na'vi live under, but as stated in the movie, there were already conflicts in the movie anyway that didn't even have to deal with the element in question. This makes the stakes in the movie nearly non-existent because not only do we not know how to properly gauge the situation, but it seems to me that this was written in a way, on purpose, to make the humans look bad, even though supposedly without this element, humanity would suffer. And the Na'vi don't even really care about it either, they just want to protect their sacred lands. So they mine areas not under the control of the Na'vi. It isn't like Pandora is small, it's fucking huge. It's orbiting a giant gas giant for fuck's sake. Considering humans have been mining our own natural resources over the course of a few millennia and we still haven't run out, there would be plenty to have of this element. And you could also have coexistence between humanity and the Na'vi, but we don't have that. Instead, the humans are antagonizing these aliens for no real reason to. A good way to fix this would be to have scenes of moral ambiguity, or scenes of camaraderie between the humans and aliens in this world, or hell, maybe even pull in some shit from Half-Life and have an unknown outside force pulling the strings and influencing everything happening on Pandora to their benefit. But nope, humans bad. That's it, that's why the humans are here. They're the bad men. The only reason the humans are in this movie to begin with is to take this planet's resources and leave it bare. Not only is that not what would happen in this situation if it were written with any level of competency, with how we are as a society now, with people literally running activist organizations to keep people from using our own natural resources in the 21st century, you would think a company with massive government backing to get this specific resource would not only have guidelines set on what to do once they get there, but also have specific orders, considering this guy was the same dude who wrote Aliens, and they had this thing in Aliens and Alien, have specific orders and surveillance of potential first contact with an alien species that is intelligent. The premise against this movie goes against basically everything that we as humans have been trying to do since we've started exploring space, which I will borrow from the opening monologue of Star Trek. To discover strange new worlds, to boldly go where no man has gone before. Alien contact is something we have been striving for a good long while now. With how much humanity has evolved with their perspective over the last century, and how advanced we have made our technology, we want to discover new life and live alongside it. Now, it isn't like we aren't going to have life forms that we would have conflicts in the future. Hell, a lot of science fiction is centered on that aspect. Halo, Half-Life, Doom, Alien, Starship Troopers, etc. But the thing that really grinds my gears is how the unobtainium is used. It's only a plot device. Everything centers around this, yet we get basically no reference to what it actually does. Not only are we told what this, not only are we not told what this thing actually does for Pandora and humanity, it's just a thing that the humans want and the Na'vi don't really care about. But the humans are portrayed as the greedy assholes who are doing it for one thing: money. And that leads me to my next point here: the allusions to the real world that the film has. One of the big things discussed not only about American history but the concept of imperialism in general is how screwed over native populations were in the conquest of their lands by far superior forces. Basically everyone nowadays agrees on that point, and we have been working towards not having that happen again. And we have also been gradually either giving the natives back their own lands, or at the very least giving them reservations that can remain untouched by the rest of the civilizations and can live into their own governing body. There are several movies about this stuff, and this exact conflict, especially in the context of American Indians in the United States. Though arguably you could also do a lot of stuff with the British conquest of like the entire world, but no, we can't do that. And there were noted people in the United States with lots of power that did their best to try to keep Native Americans on their own lands. I'm not joking you. As much as Native Americans were despised, and in some cases rightfully so because the Comanches were a thing, there was a lot of Native American tribes like the Iroquois and the Cherokee tribe that were not only really friendly to the European settlers, they didn't cause much trouble at all. And here's one of those people that was trying to help them. One of my favorite heroes in all of history and the namesake of this channel, Sam Houston. was a Tennessean that lived in the Cherokee area for a decent portion of his life when he was still living in Tennessee. They learned their customs, their language, and even married a Cherokee woman. Dude even had the balls to show up to a meeting about removing Cherokee from eastern Tennessee in Cherokee clothing. And it was so offensive to John Calhoun that he hated Houston for the rest of his life until he died. And Houston resigned from his post in the military to help resettle the Cherokee in the Arkansas Territory in 1818. And he also even did this standing up to Andrew fucking Jackson, the guy responsible for the Trail of Tears, probably the president most infamous for his hatred of Native Americans at the time. Shortly after that happened in the 1930s, he did that again. He showed up to Andrew Jackson wearing Cherokee clothing. Though to be fair, he and Houston had a pretty good relationship with each other despite that fact, because Jackson had helped Houston in his early political days. But still, that takes balls. That takes balls. And he's one of the people I would point towards as being like Exhibit A to the contrary of, oh, Americans always treated Native Americans bad. You clearly haven't heard of Sam Houston, baby. And it's not like he was completely successful. Also, after leaving office as the first president of the Republic of Texas and keeping strong connections with the tribes in the country, his successor, Marabou Lamar, fucked all of that up and went to fucking war with the Cherokee in Texas. My point here is, there was a misperspective of those who were fine with Native Americans at the time and those that weren't. And that concept has been explored thoroughly in film, video games, and literature. Do you not remember that freaking movie about the horse, Spirit? That movie's pretty good. It details some of that stuff in it too. But yeah, this concept's been explored thoroughly in film, video games, literature, and there were those that did more than most to defend those who were on American soil first. Though also, to be fair, to those who were total assholes to Native Americans discriminately, the Comanches were also a thing. They weren't the nicest of folk, I'll just say that. My contention, however, is that James Cameron either seems to believe that we would do this to screw over an intelligent alien species the first chance we get because of the abundant resources they happen to be sitting on, or James Cameron, being a rich white male in Hollywood, decided to transpose the brutality dealt to the Native Americans into a futuristic setting where it doesn't make sense to, and tell those around him that he's on their side politically. Mostly I think it's the latter option, but based on not only what's in the film, and considering that the year before this film came out was 2008, and it was the last year George W. Bush was in office, and everybody's criticizing the United States going to war in the Middle East, the war against terrorism. People keep saying, oh, it's just for oil. I tend to think now that this is just a mix of those two perspectives. To me, though, I have a bit more faith that in the future we wouldn't be so goddamn retarded when it comes to that stuff. I mean, you do realize we would gain a lot of money and resources if we traded with alien species, right? The stocks would be really high up there. In Avatar, with the main character of Jake Sully, you're put into his shoes. He's a disabled Marine with a second chance to make something of his life. And throughout the film, he makes connections with the Na'vi, even bones one of the women of the tribe, eventually is accepted as one of their own after learning their customs and language. Jake eventually fights his own kind to keep the Na'vi safe from the humans, at least the asshole ones, and drive them off Pandora. That story wouldn't be bad on its own if given the proper context, but considering the only reason they are here is for this fucking stupid ass rock that we don't know what the fuck it does, this is handled in pretty much the most shallow way imaginable. For one, wouldn't you think that there would be more than like 3 military guys that would want to keep innocents safe, alien or otherwise? You would think that in the future, perspective would actually take precedent. I know a lot of the guys there are mercs, but you can't tell me watching alien beings that did nothing wrong to you get slaughtered or have their homes destroyed right in front of you wouldn't get you to take their side. Not only that, the company also has a vested interest in keeping the Na'vi on their side as well, but yet keep encroaching on their lands. It's like this film makes no goddamn sense. And it isn't like the Na'vi are trying to kill them in the middle of operations outside their lands either, because that would actually make the film a bit more complex, bad on both sides. It reeks of the film not having enough creativity to make an interesting conflict, so it decided to take shit from Pocahontas and Kevin Costner movies to try to give the story some depth and intrigue. They don't even do much with the human characters other than the good guys. Stephen Lang's character is just a cartoonish bad guy, number 79, and the Marines are dealt with like stormtroopers. You don't care about them, and the writers don't make you care about them. The whole film is humans bad, and that is basically all the substance it has. The story is an insult to the intelligence of those watching it, and it seemed to have been done only from a political angle. Also, way to make corporations look bad when you make a movie that nets over $2 billion at the box office, Cameron. Really good look for you, mate. Hope you enjoy swimming in them gold bars. In conclusion, Avatar is a film that is the bog standard of style over substance. It may have pretty visuals and a lot of big name actors and one of the most celebrated Hollywood talents over the last 2 decades. But this film showcases not only just how far James Cameron has fallen as a filmmaker, but how poorly this film has aged. This was a film made with the sole intention to dazzle the audience. It succeeded at that, but in terms of intellectual content, it lacks all the meaning of the word substance. This track is what led to films like Prometheus, films that spit on what came before that acts like super smart and complex, that is actually stupidity incarnate. It has led to the creation of some of the worst films of the last decade, and also kept out-of-touch filmmakers keep breaking in the dough while the quality of films drops to near zero. Even Endgame, the film that deposed Avatar on the top grossing list and is highly criticized, still looks like it had more heart, passion, and dedication from those who made it. Now, from a visual standpoint, the movie does a lot of things right, but if you can't bring in your audience with a good narrative, it ultimately falls apart. I can't look at films like Avatar like I used to, because films like this, the Paul W.S. Anderson Resident Evil films after 2, The Predator, Iron Man 3, the Star Wars sequel trilogy, The Legend of Korra, and so many others all copied the same mistakes from Avatar in terms of its writing. Flashy direction and set pieces ultimately let down by the piss-poor script that it drags to the finish line. And considering James Cameron didn't stop there in pursuit of his failure with the recent failure that is Terminator Dark Fate, he has joined Bright, Naughty Dog, Shane Black, Ridley Scott, Disney, and so many other things that sacrifice the quality of their films and their series to spout inane bullshit in order to get a quick buck. And it is extremely disappointing to see. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little detailing of just why Avatar doesn't really make much sense to me. So, thank you guys for listening. Hope you enjoyed. Don't die.